And welcome to the next edition of the Fumblegate Podcast.
Upgraded edition.
The upgraded edition of the Fumblegate Podcast. We want to thank everyone who tunes in each and every week on Facebook Live, and you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Fumblegate. Follow us on Twitter at Fumblegate, at FGPCop, Fumblegate Fatty, Fumblegate Podcast at gmail.com. And once again, hello, I am Jason Griefer, the Fumblegate Fatty, Adam Kieft, former Cincinnati Bengal, and, of course, the officer. And once again there, follow us on all the social media platforms at Fumblegate. Gentlemen, once again, your Twitters, please.
At Fumblegate Fatty.
FGP Cop.
There we go. Let's get right in.
Actually, before we do that,
okay.
I always talk about drinking whiskey on here. And
that was your hashtag for a while.
It was. Give me whiskey. And I always said, like, you know, if you send me whiskey, I'll talk about your. You know what? I found the heart of my heart whiskey. It's my favorite by a wide margin. So I'm just gonna throw them props. Lafroig. This is the 10-year. It's an Isla Scotch. I got my fancy whiskey glass here.
Oh, you're gonna do the whole thing, and you're gonna do the smelling and
right.
The aromas.
We're gonna do this right. The flavor almost knocks you in the face. It's great. Get the swirl going.
This is fancy.
Get the good smell.
This is a little too high, bro. I think.
Yeah,
we're gonna lose some viewers. This is a little too high end for us.
Aim high there.
And then,
boy, he's not wasting time with that.
It's so good.
Okay, so let's move on here. Let's actually get into this thing here. Up first, we thought it was going to be talking about the NFL type stuff, everything that went on with the wild card weekend. We're going to get into that here in just a few moments, but that national championship game, Alabama-Georgia, turned out to be an absolute barn burner. It looked like it was going to be a Georgia runaway for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And then Nick Saban at halftime benches Jalen Hurts and brings in true freshman Tua Tagovailoa, and he leads them back from multiple 13-point deficits in that one. So I pose the question to you guys. Did Georgia win this, or did Georgia lose this? I'm sorry. Did they give it away, or did Alabama just flat out win this one?
I think Alabama just flat out won it. I think what we saw in the second half was the real Alabama team. In the first half, Georgia had marginal success running the ball, and they were pretty successful on offense. In the second half, they couldn't block anybody up front. Like, with the lead, they were trying to run the ball, trying to get some time off the clock and score points, and they just couldn't do it. They largely shut down Chubb. Chubb had 25 yards on 15 carries. They couldn't block Deron Payne up front. Deron Payne was a one-man wrecking crew. Their center couldn't handle him at all. It was bad. It was hard to watch. Now, I gotta give a little bit of credit to the officials, because there was two pretty bad calls that were missed. The block punt one blows my mind. He wasn't even offsides. Should have been a false start. Gets a block punt taken away. Would have given Georgia the ball inside the 20. And just down the stretch, though, I think Alabama just took the game over. I think they found a new quarterback, and I think it's the genius of Nick Saban making halftime adjustments.
Officer, did Bama win this?
I think Georgia fell apart a little bit. I think it was more than anything, basically echoing Adam's thoughts that Alabama just came out and they won it. And actually, I'm looking at the comments here, and Kyle George was asking about the linebacker for Alabama going after his coach on the sideline.
That was nuts.
Oh my gosh! And he continued to play after that. Like he punched a Georgia player.
Well, should have got him kicked out of the game to begin with.
Kicked out, and then he goes after his coach with his helmet in his hand.
Well, and some people were wondering, after a play like that, a lot of kids would have had their helmet taken away from them.
Yeah.
And yet, is there an issue there for you guys letting him play again, considering it is the title?
Yes.
A little bit. There is a little bit, and part of that, he's a special teams kid, but. Part of that, maybe Nick Saban didn't see the second part of the incident, but how the officials didn't throw him out of the game for throwing a punch on the field blows my mind. But, again, it's one of those things that again, does him still playing make a difference? Probably not, because he's just a special teams kid. But I just it's hard to argue with the genius of Nick Saban the way that they were able to come back in that second half.
Well, with that, Nick Saban, 6 national titles now, tied with Bear Bryant for the most all time. We've talked about this as the season's gone along, this debate about where he ranks all time. Does it make him the greatest college football coach ever?
I think he was the greatest college coach before this game, but it just bolsters his resume. I mean, you look at his top to bottom coaching record, and it's unbelievable. He's never lost to his protege. He's put how many was it? 9 other head coaches in college football were former assistants. He's never lost to any of them. He's dang it. His first year at Alabama was the only time that they didn't finish in the top 25.
And those are all Mike Schulis players.
The only season they didn't finish in the top 25. Since then, they haven't finished a season ranked outside the top 10. So 162 straight weeks in the polls. He's got 5 national championships here, 1 at LSU. I don't think there's any other comparison to that right now.
Officer, do we see another dynasty like this again? 5 titles in 9 years?
I mean, it's hard to say that we won't. It's hard to definitively say we're never going to see anything like this, but we're probably not. I mean, crazier things have happened. But that being said, I think this is unprecedented. I don't know if he's the greatest coach ever. He's pretty damn close if he's not. He's definitely in the discussion. I personally am sick of Alabama, but that's because
you keep winning.
I know.
That's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's very similar
I'm sick of the Patriots.
I was just about to say that. It's very similar to what we see in New England, and the fact that both of them, Bill Belichick has 5 Super Bowl rings, Nick Saban has 6 national titles. They both coached together in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And we know what happened there.
If he's not the greatest college football coach, he's going to be the standard that everyone else is held to.
Sure.
If you can't put him ahead of Bear Bryant, which now they're equal in national championships, and they happen to coach for the same school. If you don't put him ahead of Bear Bryant, every other college coach from this point forward now aspires to be Nick Saban. They no longer need to aspire to be Bear Bryant. Nick Saban is now the benchmark for college coaches going forward.
I agree with that.
It's hard to make an argument. I mean, and the thing is, the guy shows no signs of slowing down. A lot of guys that were making big plays late in that game were underclassmen. So they're coming. A lot of them are coming back.
And to make the kind of adjustment, like benching your starting quarterback.
Well, and there you go.
The national championship.
Jalen Hurts was 3 of 8 for 21 yards in the first half, so he makes the move. And I'll give credit to Jalen Hurts, first of all, as classy as you could be in the post game, and even during the game. It's very easy, I think, in that situation. You get benched in the title game to just say, forget this.
Yeah, he go hide in the corner. I mean, he could have done nothing, wanted nothing to do with it. And I don't think anybody blames him.
No,
but he was the biggest fan for his team and for the quarterback.
Tonga Vailoa throws that first touchdown pass to get them back into the game and make it 13-7, and Hurts is the first guy out there. That's a pretty darn classy kid. That being said, now Nick Saban has a dilemma on his hands at that quarterback spot because Jalen Hurts, he's, I guess now technically 20. There you go, officer.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, he's technically now, because he gets the win as a starter, he's 26-2 as a starter. But then you have Tonga Vailoa come in and basically save the national championship for them. So the debate now comes for next year, and I'll pose it to you guys. Who takes the starting job at Bama next year? Is it Jalen Hurts or is it Tua Tagovailoa?
I think if I'm Hurts, I'm looking for another place to go.
Yeah, if I'm Hurts, I'm asking if I can get a clean break. To be honest with you,
yeah.
I think Tua's the quarterback going forward. That kid can sling it. If you watch some of the plays he made as a true freshman, and he appeared in enough games, and they asked Kirby Smart after the game, were you prepared for him? And he said, yes, we've watched film on him with the anticipation that he may end up in this game.
Sure.
So there's enough film out there on him. I just watching him, the eye test, he looks like a more talented quarterback.
Well,
he can make plays with his feet.
He's more than, is Calvin Ridley open? No, okay, I'm going to run it.
Yeah, he made pretty good decisions. He made some true freshman decisions, like the sack they took in overtime. But he made some really good decisions pulling the ball down and stuff.
To that point, after he takes that sack on the touchdown pass, he looks off a 4-year starting safety and hits the backside guy right in stride 45 yards down the field.
Dude, he read it perfect. Georgia dropped into a cover 2. He looked him off. The safety stayed on the hash, didn't even come over the top, and the kid's wide open. It's a great play. That's a heady play. You won't find a whole lot of true freshmen in this country. As base as cover 2 is, you won't find a whole lot of true freshmen with the composure on 2nd and 26 with your team needing at least a field goal to look that safety off and throw it deep.
It's remarkable. Now you look at it also, it's not a bad problem for Saban to have between a quarterback that went 26 and it's gone 26-2 as a starter, and the true freshman who just came in and won the national championship for you. There are worse problems to have.
Yeah, as we've seen repeatedly with Nick Saban, he loses oodles of talent to the NFL every season, and they're always competitive. Like I said, they haven't finished out of the top 10 since his first year at Alabama. So he's going to reload regardless, but that is a good problem to have. You got a quarterback who's 26-2 and a quarterback who just came in and played a half, and now is probably the most popular person in Alabama.
It's a luxury.
It's a good problem to have.
Now,
when he turns 21, he'll never have to buy another drink in his life.
He
might have to buy one now.
I was saying,
in a college town, you might have to buy one now.
I'm surprised that they haven't started a statue for him yet down there.
Oh, it's probably in the works. The alumni probably got on the phone and was like, what does it take to get a statue of this kid?
Well, now
it's in the works.
Well, the one thing Alabama now has to consider to that point, though, Calvin Ridley is leaving for the NFL draft. He's going to be a ridiculously high draft pick, as he should. So it'll be interesting to see what Alabama does next year at the skill positions. Now, Damian Harris, the running back's coming back. That's huge for Bama.
Yeah.
Bo Scarborough, the backup's leaving. And also Payne, the defensive tackle, he's leaving as well. So some holes to fill, but if anybody's going to fill it.
Yeah, Nick Saban doesn't. And he's not afraid to put true freshmen on the field. You see what he can do with true freshmen, and he's done in the past. Tua is not the first true freshman that he's put on the field on Saturdays. Oh. He can find talent that can play right away in the SEC, and somehow he does it better than anybody else does right now.
On the flip side, it looked like this was going to be all Georgia all night long. They seemed to have an answer for everything Alabama did. And then things started to change in that second half. Adam, you mentioned it before, that Nick Chubb just really could never get going in this game whatsoever.
He was the punishing back and just couldn't find any space inside. Like I said,
that's Alabama's specialty.
Yeah,
you're not going to run up the middle on Alabama.
Yeah,
and that Chubb was just a terrible match to go against this Alabama team.
Yeah, I'm surprised Michelle didn't get a few more carries in the second half. But at some point, they were having trouble get to the edge too. They were having trouble running the ball. Period.
Well, now, Michelle had a nice night. He was around 100 yards or so. But the question now comes for Georgia. Nick Chubb and Sony Michel are graduating, the best tandem duo running back combo in NCAA history, passing Eric Dickerson and Craig James combined rushing yardage. So you wonder now with Georgia on their side, it looks like they're set up to probably hang around for a while. But with those two beasts in the backfield graduating, do we possibly see Georgia maybe take a small step back next year?
I don't know if their offense worries me as much as their defense. They lose all 4 starting linebackers, and those linebackers were pretty doggone good. Now, their offense, it does hurt losing their backfield, but they do have DeAndre Swift, who happened to run for 618 yards this year. They got a quarterback.
And average almost 8 yards a carry.
Yeah, and they got a quarterback who's only going into his sophomore season. Now he gets a full off season. He gets a spring ball practice set. We saw his pretty good quarterback, especially, he's SEC freshman of the year.
Well, he's forcing Eason to transfer out.
Yeah, and Eason's leaving. So he's not a bad quarterback. Riley Ridley kind of came out of nowhere in the national championship game, the brother of Calvin. But I think offensively they have weapons. They only lose one guy up front on their offensive line, so they got a core of their offensive line coming back. I'm more worried about where their defense goes, because their defense was pretty stout this season, and now you lose 4 of the best linebackers in the country all at the same time. But, again, it's the same deal. The SEC, especially teams that are at the top, like Georgia, find a way to reload very quickly. And I don't know if you necessarily see them in the playoff again next year, but I think they're going to make a run for the SEC again.
Well, okay, so basically everything you said, Riley Ridley coming in because Javon Williams gets hurt. He goes from having 8 catches all year, gets his first start, has 6 for 82 against Alabama. And then they have the number one recruit class in the country, including the number one overall player in quarterback Justin Fields. Now, they have Fromm, so they don't necessarily need him now. But they also got the number one running back in the country in Zamir White, who is a big, bruising kid that looks like he might be able to come in and contribute immediately. And they almost, not to the level of Chubbs and Michelle, but they have maybe that running back combo that they are used to having. Best recruit class in the country. I don't think, and their defense, we got to wait and see who all decides to come out. I mean, linebacker Raquan Smith is probably going to leave. He's going to be.
He won the Buckus Award. There's no reason for him to stay.
He's going to be a top 10 guy. Probably the best linebacker in the draft. Sure. But I think they'll be all right. I think they're a top 5 team at the beginning of next season.
I think they will be top 5 as well. And if anybody, to your point, Adam, can reload a defense, it's Kirby Smart. I mean, he was the guy who probably was responsible for a lot of those guys on Nick Saban's defense, building them up to what they could be. Of course, he's been gone for a couple of years now, but I think if anybody, especially you're seeing Kirby Smart in just his second recruiting year, bring in what a lot of people consider the number one class in the country. There's a lot of services out there that have their varying opinions, but they just have that pipeline at Georgia where it doesn't really seem to matter who the coach is. You got somebody that can produce, obviously, but right now they're just on such a roll from where Mark Richt had them for a dozen years winning 10 or more games, that now Kirby Smart's come in and it's seemingly taken it to the next step. Yeah. Because we've seen Kirby Smart be able to win the big games, whereas Mark Richt, not so much.
He kind of fell off.
And we saw it, this year at Miami with Mark Richt and their 3-game losing streak to end the season.
Yeah.
So
they struggle down the stretch, and that's one thing that apparently Kirby Smart just doesn't allow his team to do.
But much like Nick Saban, it's not the worst place to say, okay, we're taking a step back, because they'll probably still be, like the officer said, preseason top 5, if not top 10. Next season.
They'll start the season near the top, and they'll definitely be able to compete. I mean, they have a core of talent coming back, and Kirby Smart's shown that he's a pretty good football coach.
So elsewhere around college football, again, we have Bama wins the title, of course, and Georgia finishes second in the polls, of course. But you have a team who down in Orlando, Florida, who is claiming themselves as national champions, the Central Florida Knights.
Oh yeah.
And at the end of the voting cycle, as it came out, Central Florida got 4 first-place votes in the AP poll, and that's not something we see very often. Of course, they're the only unbeaten team. They finished 6th in the rankings, but
I love it. I love it.
Usually, the AP poll, it's usually unanimous, and they got 4. They got 4 first-place votes.
I think they've made the best argument for a not national title winner in several years. I knew they were good. I didn't think that they were probably as good as a lot of the best teams, and they came out and they beat a really good Auburn team. So it shows what I know.
Should they have gotten more than 4 first place votes?
Should have got more than 4.
I get why they didn't, but they probably should have. Yes.
Up until this point, it's like the officer said, it's the best argument that you've seen from a team who didn't play in that Final Four, or even back in the BCS championship days. It's the best argument a team has because of those New Year's Six bowls and because of the matchup they played in that New Year's Six bowl, going in and beating Auburn, who beat both teams playing in the national championship. You hate to play. You hate to play the transitive property game where, X beats Y and Y beats Z, so X is better than Z. But
Mike Polley tried doing that with Middle Tennessee and Clemson and Syracuse and all that stuff.
Central Michigan has a road to beating Alabama, too. There's a chain that Central Michigan gets on, too, that Central could change national.
No.
Anyway, fire up chips.
But you had to get it in there, didn't you?
I had to. But, the arguments, the 4 guys that voted for him, one of them happens to be a writer for the Orlando Sentinel, but the other guy, one from Omaha, one from Oklahoma, and one from Waterbury, Connecticut, were the 4 guys that voted for UCF at first. And one guy put it pretty plainly, and it makes, maybe this might be one of the better arguments. They're the conference champion, and they're 2 losses better than every other conference champion in the country. Every other conference champion in the country has 2 losses.
Because remember, Auburn won the SEC.
Georgia won the SEC.
Well, yeah, that's right.
Georgia won the
Yeah,
SEC, but
Auburn
they end
was
up with
there.
two. But they end up
beat
with
Auburn.
and they beat Auburn. So Auburn beat the two teams in the national championship, and every other conference champ had 2 losses. And it's hard to argue against that.
Sure.
The reasoning is there. Again, I don't know that this is the year that forces anybody to examine a 6 or 8 team playoff, but it was a great story for everybody involved. The whole season was great. Scott Frost coming back for the bowl game was great.
Yeah.
The fact that they got 4 votes in the AP poll is well deserved. Them claiming themselves as national champions, well deserved. Because you look back before the BCS and the national championship, the college football playoff.
It was just the polls.
It was just the polls, and anybody who finished first in any poll that was out there claimed national championships. Oklahoma State claimed a national championship from 1953 this year.
Kentucky claims one from 1950 because they were number 1 in the Sagarin ratings.
Yeah, which stopped being in existence in the 70s. So it's like, it's all these other teams can claim those kind of things.
Champs!
But why not? I mean,
Bama already has the number 17 championship year up in their practice facility, by the way.
And good for them. But UCF, well deserved. I'm glad that they claimed it, and I don't look for them to fall off that much either because they got a pretty good core of players coming back too. I don't think they're going undefeated again, but they're a team that right now is built to be around for a little while. So they might be a team that is in conversations. You hear a little bit more about them than you did 2 years ago when they were 0-12.
I think the best part about that, though, and we talked about this over the last couple of weeks, is that they paid the coaches the incentives in their contracts for winning a national championship.
That's awesome.
They paid them all out for it. They're claiming it, and they're giving credit to the coaches, saying, "We consider you national championships. Here's your 5 or 6 figure bonus, whatever it happens to be." And I also found it interesting, by the way, get to that point. I saw some of the bonus clauses from Alabama's coaches, and the fact that Jeremy Pruitt got more than twice as much as Nick Saban did for winning that title is good for Saban for getting his assistants.
Saban's not hurting. His wallet is going to be okay.
He's probably making 10, 11 million bucks a year.
I think his kids will eat that.
Yeah,
but I think Pruitt got something close to like $250,000, and Saban's bonus was $100,000.
Good for them.
But
That's awesome.
A good way to send Pruitt off to Tennessee.
Good thing they can't pay players, but they can pay coaches.
Well, and never enough money. But, what are you going to do? With that said, we will now move on and feature a bit here from Mr. Adam Kieft. We're starting to wind this down because the football season's winding down. We got to start working on the yearly nominees, but
we got 4 good ones this week, though.
Well, let's see what we got here.
Well, one of them coming from the national championship game, and let me tell you, there's nobody happier that Alabama won the title than this guy.
Let's get here. It is the Adam Kieft Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week.
Andy Papanastos. He is the most excited person in the country that they end up winning that game because he missed from 40 to open the game, and then misses from 36 as time expires. That would have won the game at the end. Oh man. If they end up losing that game, guess who's walking back home? Because he is not getting on that bus with his teammates.
So.
I wouldn't even want to. If we lose that game, I don't even want to get on the bus. I would walk.
Guys, you got any room in the van?
Yeah. Like, what's the cheapest way for me to get home? Because I am not riding with my teammates after that one. But anyway, so from the other national championship game, one that people may have forgotten about, but the 1AA national championship game, or the FCS national championship game.
Get it right. They get heard about that.
North Dakota State Bison actually won their...
The
Bison won their 6th title in 7 years. Now tied with Georgia Southern for the most FCS titles in the history.
Which, by the way, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt. In the FCS playoffs, since they've gone to that format, they are 28-2.
No,
in the playoffs.
They're.
I mean, goodness gracious.
They got something going on up there, and they can't get the coaches away from there. Like, whatever's happening in North Dakota.
You don't hear any talk of them moving up to the FBS level either.
No.
Stay where you're
at. Stay where you're dominant.
That's what's great.
Whatever you're doing's working, so just stick with what you know.
I agree.
But in that game, James Madison kicker Ethan Racky, early in the game, he misses from 42. And why is this an issue? Because at the end of the game, they're got the ball on the 20, down 4 instead of 1. They could have been down 1 with the ball on the North Dakota State 20. 20-yard line. So they got to go for a touchdown instead of just kicking a field goal and winning the game by 2. But because he missed that field goal kick earlier in the game from 42, they don't even have a chance to kick it. And we got another one just like that coming from the NFL now. Graham Gano from the Panthers. This one's good because it's an NFL guy.
I was going to say it's because it was he's Cam Newton's kicker.
Well, yeah, that too. But
punch face.
He missed from 25. From 25. Ball on the 8-yard line. He misses a field goal. Ooh.
That's less than a PAT.
Yeah, less than the new PAT.
They were in a dome too, so
yeah, in a dome, no wind, just
maybe it's the earth of the rotation of the earth threw him off or something.
The Coriolis effect, I think, is that what it is. But he misses from 25. Again, at the end of the game, they're on the 21, but they're down 5 instead of being down 2. So they got to go for a touchdown instead of kicking a field goal from the 21-yard line. They got to go for a touchdown instead. So that one ends up costing them at the end of the game. But the winner this week, because it actually loses the game for them, the Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, which good name for a kicker, by the way.
That's a very kicker name.
Harrison Butker. Harrison Butker misses from 48 yards. Would have put him up 17 going into the fourth quarter. And we're going to talk about it here in a second, but as we all know, the Chiefs collapsed late. They end up losing the game by 1 because Butker missed from 48, well within his range, too. And he misses from 48. They lose the game by 1. What a Butker. So for that reason, Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs.
This is you.
This right trophy, here. That's you.
It's you.
You're this week's winner.
Camera 1 or camera 2? One. This
week's winner of the Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week. Well done, son. Well done.
Well, with that, let's talk about that game there. Kansas City, a 21-3 lead. It took it at halftime and into the third quarter. And winds up just letting it go, as we've seen Andy Reid do a lot in his past. You get a lead and you try and sit on it, as is typical what NFC football used to be. He still tries to parlay that nowadays. They lose the game to the Tennessee Titans, who for a lot of that game looks like they were completely disinterested in being involved in the game.
Yeah, they almost didn't even look like they wanted to play till the third quarter.
Yeah,
like it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad to watch it, and you thought it was going to be a runaway. And the Chiefs, down the stretch, struggling. Andy Reid, I don't know what Andy Reid is doing.
They figured it out pretty quickly. It started with Mariota tossing the touchdown to himself, which was, I think it really got it going. And then they realized, we have a 6'4", 250-pound running back in Derrick Henry. Let's feed him the ball a million times.
Let's see what he can do.
Kansas City
couldn't
stop.
That's what team's built to do.
Exactly. That's why in the beginning of the season, in the preseason, I thought they could make a run to the AFC title game. They're still alive.
They're still alive.
They're still alive.
They proved they can run the football.
They're still alive.
They got a quarterback who can throw touchdowns to himself.
They're still alive.
Yeah, we'll talk about who they play next in just a little bit here. But with that said, another home playoff loss for Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs. Is his seat getting a little warm in Kansas City?
Has to be.
I mean, I think that's the farthest you can go with it. Maybe a little warm. You can't get rid of him. I mean, overall they had a good year. Yeah, they lost. They imploded actually, and they should have won that game. But you can't get rid of Andy Reid right now.
He's earned more respect than losing his job over something like that. But whatever the reason. By the way, random fact: the last time the Chiefs won a home playoff game?
It was like 1992.
Who was the quarterback?
Joe Montana.
Joe Montana. Montanta. Joe Montana.
Hashtag Montanta.
Hashtag Montana. But
cheater check.
Cheater check. Shout out to Fu Man Drew. But yeah, I don't know what Andy Reid. It just looked like the second half. He mismanaged the crap out of the second half. They get seven carries for the NFL's leading rusher in the first half, and then the rest of the game, or in the first quarter, rest of the game he has 6 carries. How is the NFL's leading rusher have 6 carries in the last 3 quarters?
Playing with a lead throughout most of the
game. And he only has 6 more carries. 3rd and 1, they run the speed option with Alex Smith. What do you run the speed option with Alex Smith?
Why is Alex Smith ever running it, ever?
Yeah, why is Alex Smith ever running a play with speed in it? Like, we all know he's a white quarterback, and he's at the tail end of his career.
Probably one of the slower white quarterbacks at that.
It was hard to watch down the stretch. It just, I left for a little bit. Me and my wife went out to dinner, and I was watching it on the TV, and I'm watching the game just like slip away from the Chiefs, and I was like, this is, it's almost like Andy Reid outthought himself. He almost did too much thinking. Just stick with what you know, move the ball, get points, kick field goal, or miss field goals, as Butker proved. But
what a Butker!
I don't know. I don't know what it is about Andy Reid in the playoffs, but for some reason I think he overthinks it. I really do. I think he pulls out bags of tricks that he doesn't need to use. Just stick with what got you there.
Well, and now the debate comes with Kansas City because the belief is they're gonna do some retooling on the defensive side. Some guys are getting older, but a lot of people believe, and I'll get your guys' thoughts on this, we may have seen Alex Smith in a Kansas City uniform for the last time because it looks like they're ready to get Patrick Mahomes into the thick of things. He started week 17. They won at Denver, who didn't care by that point. I don't think Denver cared all season long.
No, they didn't.
So they win that game.
Sorry, Jeff.
But that's seemingly where we go here because they traded up last year in the draft to pick him 10th overall. So you had to think, boy.
Well, it's in the works, but are you really going to abandon a guy who just had a career year? And he had a good playoff game. His QBR in the playoff game was 106. Like, he played well all season. He, led the league in QBR for the season. Mm-hmm. Are you really going to abandon him right now? I have a hard time believing that a playoff team is going to abandon a quarterback who had a career year for a rookie that's a second-year player that's unproven. I mean, crazier things have happened, but I don't see it yet. I don't unless somebody's beating down their door to try and get Alex Smith for their quarterback.
I think that's the thing that they're hoping for because he had.
I don't think that's going to happen either.
Because he had such a year that they figure maybe now strike while the iron's hot, and maybe you can get a good draft, maybe a second round pick for him. I don't think anyone's going to give up a 1 for Alex Smith.
No, and they shouldn't because he's only got a couple years left. Legitimately,
and this was by far his best year in the league, and he picked a hell of a year to do it in when he probably saw the writing on the wall before the year that, hey, this kid's coming for my job.
I think if he would be a really good match in Jacksonville because they just need somebody to not lose them games. They can run the ball, they play really good defense, and they just need somebody to not lose it, which he's more than capable of that.
There's teams out there that are going to be a fit for him. I don't think anybody's beating down their door. I don't think they're going to get a return on their investment like maybe they expect. It's not a situation like when the Raiders went after Palmer. It's not going to be, it's not going to be somebody trading for a franchise quarterback. But I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. I see it happening. It doesn't make sense to me. I just don't know if you give the reins to Mahomes just yet when he's playing his best football right now.
On the other side of the AFC wild card round, and this was something to behold, this football game. Jacksonville advances in the most listless way possible, beating the Buffalo Bills 10-3 in a game in which there were 17 punts, so Pat McAfee's probably going gaga.
For the brand.
Yeah.
For the brand.
During the game.
Shout out, Pat. Tweet us back, Pat.
I'll pose this to you, officer, because you always like to say, well, hey, I like the low-scoring defensive games.
Hold on.
I don't like
competitive.
That is not what I say. I said I like defensive games. I don't like bad offensive games.
So you're not saying this was good for the NFL?
This was terrible for the NFL. This wasn't two great defenses. Although Jacksonville does have a really good defense, this was piss poor offense.
That's one way to put it.
Blake Bortles, and then whatever they're trying to attempt there in Buffalo.
What?
The officer's right. The offense was terrible. Buffalo 7-18 on third downs. Jacksonville 2 of 12 on third down.
Now
2 of 12.
Real quick, I will say that it's probably a good thing that Buffalo only makes the playoffs every 17 years because if it were more than that, I would buy stock in folding table companies.
Yeah.
Did you guys see?
Hashtag Bills Mafia.
Yeah, Bills Mafia. Well, they bust tables at every tailgate.
That's become their thing.
They were especially fired up for the playoff game.
Yes.
There was a lot of broken tables.
Shout out to the Bills fan that got an Andy Dalton tattoo. Yeah. By the way, he got his Andy Dalton's face tattooed on himself.
Yeah. And shout out to the Jags fan that already got the Super Bowl champs tattoo, by the way.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
Which means they're losing this week, guaranteed. Anytime you get the Super Bowl champs tattoo, you know you just jinxed your team. There's no shot at winning the game this week.
Games like these, it's like, oh my gosh, like what? Like, and you're telling me that these are, like, for example, Jacksonville, that's the best representative of the AFC South that you have. with Buffalo, you're telling me they're the 6th best team in the AFC. Like that's and we talked about it throughout most of the season how rough this AFC was for most of the year. It was basically
we talked about a 7-9 team possibly making it in the AFC just because of how bad the bottom end
on the wild card.
The wild card, but how bad the bottom
it's
end
amazing
of the AFC
to see
was.
that these two teams are playing each other in the playoffs when you can obviously tell both of them are trying to get rid of their starting quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And they both make the playoffs anyway. That's how bad the AFC was this season.
Yeah,
it was,
at least the bottom end of it.
Yeah, the bottom end of it. Well, you had basically New England, Pittsburgh in the field.
Yeah.
And it was just...
we had a really good comment in here. If the Bills love Dalton so much, maybe they'll trade for him.
I saw some fan had a Dalton jersey made up.
Yeah. He had a Bills Dalton jersey.
I can get behind that.
I think most of Cincinnati can get behind them taking Marvin too.
Right.
There's a lot of people. Yeah, and Mike Brown, absolutely.
Let's keep going.
We'll just package it all in there.
What else we got? Adam, you want to go to Buffalo too?
If they'll pay me,
you want to be the least favorite Bill or least famous Bill?
Least famous Buffalo Bill. I'm already the least famous Cincinnati Bengal. I could put 2 teams on my resume.
Let's go like LaDainian Thomas and get each team tattooed on yourself. Moving over to the NFC and a couple of games that turn out to be much better than both the AFC games.
Much better,
I would argue. The first one out in LA, seeing the Rams get into the playoffs for the first time in quite a long time. They can't quite get things going, though, and they lose to Atlanta out there, and Atlanta moves on to Philly, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But a good stepping stone for the Rams this year after such futility for such a long time, both in St. Louis and in Atlanta under Jeff Fisher. Sean McVay, Coach of the Year, no shock there. He should have been.
Yeah. No, the game was surprised by that announcement.
You got Todd Gurley out there, might finish second in the MVP voting, I think.
Should finish first, but...
The argument's there.
Or Antonio Brown, but Antonio Brown got hurt at the end of the season, which is going to hurt his chances.
Hashtag Todd Brady.
Todd Brady. There you go, Todd.
Yeah.
Well done, Todd.
Yeah, way to go there, officer. So I'll pose this to you two, and we will see what you guys think here. True or false? I almost said St. Louis. Wow. The LA Rams will be back in the playoffs next year.
Resounding true.
Yes.
I don't see them losing any pieces. I see them do nothing but get better at this point.
I think what they did is I think they now Sean McVay and the Rams organization put themselves in a position to get free agents.
Yeah.
They did a lot of trading to put weapons around Goff this year, but I think they had a good draft. I think they continue to make good personnel decisions. I think they bring in free agents, find help for the guys they have.
I think McVay's changing the culture there already.
Yeah, and everybody on that team has bought into it, and you can tell. You can tell how fired up they are as a team with him at the helm. The difference. And with Jeff Fisher, you didn't see or hear a lot about him to begin with. But if you watch the difference and how the game's played on Sunday and what their sideline looks like on Sundays with Sean McVay there versus the way it was with Jeff Fisher, it's not even close. It's I think 100% they get to the playoffs next year, save injuries. If they keep their team intact and stay healthy, I don't think there's any question that they go back to the playoffs.
Well, Goff has another year under his belt,
Yeah.
and yes, I think. Without a doubt.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think especially in that division where you're having Seattle with a bunch of turnover with the coaching staff. They fired Darryl Bevell, their offensive coordinator. They fired their O-line coach, Tom Cable. I think their defensive coordinator is now moving on. You have the Legion of Boom getting older and maybe too old to play anymore.
Might get broken up. There's a lot of talk about Seattle kind of blowing everything up and starting all over again.
Well, you look at them right now.
You kind of get to that point where the window's probably closed, if not.
Well, I think you have to do something if you're Seattle, though, because you have Russell Wilson in his prime right now, and Russell Wilson. I made my case for it during the last few weeks of the regular season. He was as valuable to them as anyone else in the entire league. At one point, he was responsible for like 92% of their touchdowns.
Well, and if MVP was actually the most valuable player, he'd be a candidate. If it wasn't a popularity contest,
or if it wasn't based on their record, of course.
Or if it wasn't like if your name's Tom Brady, you win.
That's what's going to happen this year,
regardless of what you do.
Like, what's the easiest name to spell? Tom. We'll just write Tom. Everybody knows who it is. That's all you need to do.
So elsewhere in the NFC, and we touched on it just a moment ago, and it turned out to be, I think, the best game of the first weekend of the postseason was the New Orleans Saints beating the Carolina Panthers for the third time this season. Of course, Graham Gano, right in there, the Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week
unfortunate,
nominee.
Missing the 25-yarder. Ooh.
So this is another an early exit in the playoffs, obviously, for Carolina. They just barely got in this time around. They're making changes as well. They fired their offensive coordinator, Mike Shula. They fired their quarterback coach, Ken Dorsey. It looks like they're going to finalize the deal to bring Norv Turner in to be their OC, who's been a very good coordinator throughout his days. Head coach, kind of a wish-wash there. So with that, Carolina, again, out this season, out in the first round of the playoffs. You have all the changes going on right now. Is this it as far as this run with Cam Newton at the helm for the Carolina Panthers?
One can only hope. Whatever we can do to see less of Cam Newton on television, the better.
Not even television, just in general.
If Cam Newton disappears from the public sector, I would love it. Honestly, their window is fast closing. Is it the last chance, the last run they make at it? I don't know necessarily, but I don't think they're going to be as good of a team next year. I think it's kind of become rebuilding process now. If Cam Newton's obviously Cam Newton's their guy going forward, but if they're intent on making another run, I think it's time to start putting some more pieces around Cam Newton. They're just not, to me. The fact that they got in, I don't think we all picked them to lose to the Saints, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just, I don't know, something about that team just is unimpressive to me, and I didn't expect them, even to make the playoffs at some point. But, I just don't see them being an elite team that made that run to the Super Bowl. I don't see that coming back anytime soon.
I don't think you can say that Cam is done going to the playoffs. I think he's young. I think he has enough years left. He's kind of got that Ben Roethlisberger play style where he's a big, strong body.
Yeah. Where
he can play he has a lot left. It's not that if he loses a step, it's not really going to hurt his game that much. So with that in mind, with as much time I think as he has left, no, as much as I agree, and I'd like to say that
is he finished? Not do you want him to be finished?
Yeah. Because those are two different answers. Yes, I would love for him to be finished, but I don't think legitimately you can say that he's not going to play another playoff game, and it would be silly to say that. There's too many years left for him.
So they're out though, but 8 teams are moving on, and let's talk about the next round of the playoffs. It begins on Saturday, this coming Saturday afternoon at 4:35. The Atlanta Falcons, the 6th seed, last team in, they're the favorites at number 1, at the top seed Philadelphia. They're a 3-point favorite going into that game. We've never seen that before, where the number 1 seed is a home dog in the divisional round.
We buying it?
Philly is an underdog? Absolutely, I'm buying it.
Yeah, I'm buying it too.
Because the way Atlanta went out L.A. and they were in control of that game throughout.
They really were.
You could see in that game how young the Rams were as far as, just not very many guys with playoff experience, and it showed, and it goes to the coaching staff as well. But like we talked about, I think the Rams are set up for a nice run for a few years.
Yeah.
But the way Atlanta played there and the way they were able to just move the ball around, and plus the fact that the last couple of weeks of the regular season, Nick Foles has been a nothing.
Yeah, losing Carson Wentz is really starting to catch up with him, and I said, and I was wrong about it. I thought
even
Nick
in
Foles,
your
my vagueness, I will admit, I thought Nick Foles would be a better, more of a help for them than he's ended up being.
You take out the last week of the season, which meant nothing to them.
Yeah. Of
course, they didn't start anybody. And of course, losing that game 6-0. Nice job for the
you can't count anything
for the
that.
Philly fans who paid your hard-earned dollar to watch that load of garbage.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, Are you buying Atlanta as the favorite in this one?
So
I am.
Both teams have top 10 defenses, right? I think their defenses kind of offset each other. So if you look at it, with Carson Wentz, the Eagles scored 2.5 points per drive. With Foles, 1.5 points per drive. Carson Wentz, that 50% third down conversion, which is absolutely amazing. And then with Foles, they're down to 23% third down conversions. So I think it's too big of a drop off to overcome. That offense is dramatically different. And then you throw in the fact that this season the Falcons are 11-0 when they score 18 or more, and I think they're going to be able to put up 18. So yes.
I think the Falcons won, and I said this last week. I take quarterbacks with experience, and even if Carson Wentz was there, I still like Matt Ryan and the experience that they got last year. Matt Ryan is a motivated individual based on what happened in last year's Super Bowl, and their team. Right now, you watch the Falcons play, and it looks like they're hitting their stride, and that's when you want to hit your stride is when you make it to the playoffs. So, like we said, they controlled that game out in L.A. They got to travel up to Philly. The weather may be an issue because there is a lot of weather coming in this weekend.
Yeah. It's supposed to be 40 degrees, and where they're at, it's not supposed to be.
Oh, they're not getting much sun.
Well, in other case, so Atlanta's a dome team. They played on the road last week, but that was out in Los Angeles, so it's a little different going into Philly as well. So. That being said, are we all on the Atlanta bandwagon for this one?
I'm on.
Does Atlanta move on to the NFC title game?
I'm on.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you as well. The other Saturday game, which on paper should not be close, and I actually picked this matchup in the preseason. I want to pat myself on the back. I was just around early on it. I picked Tennessee and New England to meet up. I just happened to have it be in the AFC title game.
Well done, officer.
There you go, officer.
Thank you, sirs.
They're playing this weekend in the divisional round. New England, a 13.5-point favorite. How much does New England cover by? I'm sorry, I don't see, unless Mariota has the game of his life,
which isn't going to happen.
I don't.
You want to know what stat it's going to take for Tennessee to be able to stand a chance this game to make?
He has to throw himself 2 touchdowns.
4. If Mariota throws himself at least 4 touchdowns, this might be a game.
But the thing is, their offense is not designed for that, though. That's the thing you have to consider. I mean,
they have to be 2 himself.
Oh, okay.
That's the only shot they got.
4 passing and receiving.
Yeah. Yes. That's what I say. He has to throw 4 to
unless
himself.
Derrick Henry carries it 60 times for.
If Derrick Henry rushes for 150 yards and Mariota throws 2 more touchdown passes to himself, maybe. No, okay. No, so you had that big ESPN article this week about how the dynasty is dwindling and Kraft and Belichick
they all
and
hate each
other. The Triple B's hate each other.
Nobody is happier about this article than hashtag cheater. Right? He may have written this article and put it out himself because
it takes all the focus off the game.
It does. And no team in the last 15 years that I can think of does better against adversity than New England Patriots.
I don't even think they look at it as adversity. I think they look at it as motivation. Like, okay, there's somebody else wanting to pin something against us.
It's potentially
let's shove it back at them.
But right, exactly. And then you throw in the fact in their last 6 divisional games, they're 6-0 and average scoring 37.5 points. Yeah, this one's going to get ugly quick.
Yeah, a team that put up 230 total yards against the Buffalo Bills, and now you're going to New England. It's going to get ugly. 13.5. Vegas is usually pretty on with their spreads. I don't know that it gets much past that because Belichick won't take any risks to get anybody hurt in that game. But yeah, if they beat him by 20,
he might be looking to make a statement.
Yeah, but if they beat him by 28, it wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, it's Jacksonville has no chance in this game. None.
Neither does Tennessee.
Well, Tennessee.
Or Tennessee.
Wait.
When we get to Jacksonville,
we'll talk about that here.
Tennessee doesn't.
We'll talk about that. Okay, I'll pose this to you before we move on to that.
I screwed that all up because I used Jackson's.
Yeah,
Buffalo.
Hashtag Fumblegate.
Yeah, Buffalo, Jacksonville. I got to pay better attention to my notes. They still don't have a chance.
Does Tom Brady finish this game?
No.
Nope.
No.
I'm not even saying by injury. I'm saying
I know he gets pulled because it's a blowout.
Yeah, because he's not going to take any chances and get anybody hurt at the end of that game.
Okay, these are two resounding picks, by the way, on these first two, Atlanta and New England.
I'm less confident in my Atlanta pick, but this one, Tennessee, sorry, Titans, tighten down. Yeah. You're not tightening up this one, tighten down.
Moving on to the other AFC game, which will kick things off on Saturday. Jacksonville, again, with that, whatever that was over Buffalo, a playoff win. Congratulations there. You did something Marvin Lewis still hasn't done. And officer, what was that stat, by the way, about the number of coaches that have won since Marvin Lewis took a playoff game? Like
going into the playoffs, 39 coaches had won a playoff game since Marvin Lewis had taken over as head coach for the Bengals, and that number could have gone as high as 45 throughout these playoffs.
It's a lot. So the next game is a rematch from earlier in the season. Jacksonville heads to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, a 7.5-point favorite at last check. Of course, Jacksonville won that game because that defense, which I think was really the eye catcher for everyone with this Jacksonville defense this season, picking Roethlisberger off 5 times in that game. I don't see anything resembling that happening this time around because they're watching that tape over and over again, and I'm sure they're a very motivated squad. And the thing is with Jacksonville, too, we saw with their offense.
230 total yards. 230 yards against Buffalo.
If you look, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was 30-9. Jacksonville must have blown them out. But Pittsburgh was winning 9-7 with 7 minutes left in the third quarter. Like it was a close game. Pittsburgh had more yards, 371 to 315. They had more first downs, 21 to 15. I would mention that Bortles threw for less than 100 yards, but that stat now is apparently meaningless because
holds no water because it happens all the time.
Right. Jacksonville, they can win despite poor Bortles play. They've been doing all year, but Roethlisberger threw 5 interceptions that game. 4 of them were in the second half, and 2 of them went for touchdowns. That's not going to happen again. And then you look at the Steelers are 8-0 in playoff games when Ben throws for less than 225 yards. So, and they're 5-7 when he throws for more. So in the playoffs, the Steelers are actually better the less that Ben Roethlisberger does, which I thought was an interesting stat.
Hey, it helps that you have the best running back in football.
But I'm talking his whole career.
You're right. It hasn't been throughout that entire time.
So with that in mind, Jacksonville struggled against the run. And I think they ride Le'Veon Bell, as you alluded to just there. And then you throw in the fact that at kickoff, the game's supposed to be 17 degrees in Pittsburgh. I'm not going to pick a Florida team in 17-degree weather, especially with all those other facts that I mentioned. So, yeah, I think Pittsburgh wins this one handily.
I agree. I think Pittsburgh wins it running away. I'm using the wrong stat again, but Jacksonville, 230 yards against the Buffalo Bills defense. I just don't see them going
Somebody
up.
had 230 yards against somebody.
Something against somebody. Be as vague as possible, or just be flat out wrong, whatever.
Just be confident about it.
Well, we used to have a guy on the show that was wrong all the time. So,
we had to cut stuff out.
But anyway, it's...
You said it, I didn't. I just didn't disagree.
AB is supposed to be playing in the game. He just won AFC Offensive Player of the Year. I don't, Ben Roethlisberger seems to make good decisions come playoff time. He's not throwing 5 interceptions in this game.
No.
Jacksonville, he might not even throw the ball 5 times in this game. Who knows? But, I just, with their run game, Le'Veon Bell behind Ben, Ben makes good decisions. He's a playoff-ready quarterback. He's been to the playoffs. He's won Super Bowls. He knows how to handle the playoffs. And like you said, they have watched that game on repeat since last week, knowing that they were probably going to end up playing them again in the playoffs.
If Jacksonville stays in this game, I think they're going to have to score on defense, number one. I think they may have to score twice on defense to have a shot at winning. Two touchdowns on defense. Yeah. To have a shot in this game. Special teams, that's always a mix because you can line up the stats and say who's good on special teams and who isn't, but that's a crapshoot most of the time when you're on special teams. I mean, some teams do it better than others, but neither one of these teams really stand out in that regard. Yeah. Jacksonville's defense has been so good for most of the season. I think, again, they have to score twice on defense if they want a shot in this game.
Still not going to happen.
Yeah, I just think Pittsburgh's just too cognizant of the mistakes that they made in that first game to get those cleaned up, and especially, of course, with Antonio Brown coming back. And it was fun seeing the videos on social media of him torching Chad Johnson in workouts. Of course, Ocho Cinco just turned 40. Happy birthday, Ocho Cinco. Does that make you feel old?
Yeah,
that he's 40.
Man,
but he looks.
Where does time go?
He looks healthy. Antonio Brown does. We're all unanimous again with Pittsburgh. Now we get to the game that I am glad is the last one being played, because I think it's going to be the best game of the weekend.
It's certainly on paper, it appears to be the most what's going to be the most fun game to watch. Hopefully,
New Orleans heading to Minnesota Sunday afternoon. Minnesota, at last check, a 4-point favorite at home, which you kind of expect that in this one. I think this should be an outstanding ball game. I think this is going to be low scoring between these two teams.
I didn't think you liked low scoring games.
I didn't say. I think enough offensive plays will be made. I don't go that way. But then you also said I like low scoring defensive games, and you got 10-3.
Good defensive games, not piss poor offensive games.
not 10-3 struggles.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big difference.
But on paper, going into this looks like it should be a really, really good football game.
Yeah, agreed.
Defense versus offense, it's
and that's both ways.
Yeah, both ways.
Sean Payton's figured out this season. Holy crap, we got to have defense to win.
Yeah, we got to play defense. We can't just go out and try to score 40.
This whole defense thing,
and they've been doing it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And to me, what it comes down to again, and I've said this before, is quarterbacks with experience. I like Drew Brees with his experience and having a Super Bowl win under his belt. He handles pressure games well. I think that they find enough ways to make plays. How balanced their offense is this season, I know the officer talked about it earlier this year. They just have a balanced offense, and I think that as good as the Vikings defense is, they're going to find a way to poke holes in that defense and end up winning the game.
So you're on New Orleans.
I am. I just something about Case Keenum. I don't trust him to make plays when he needs to. And again,
he's been doing it all year.
He has. But again, playoffs are a different bird, and you saw that with the difference between Goff and Matt Ryan.
So I got some stats to back up what you're saying.
Go ahead, throw the stats out, because I just don't trust inexperienced or young quarterbacks in the playoffs as much as I trust guys like Drew Brees that have been there so many times before.
I agree, and here's the statistics to back it up. Since 2013, quarterbacks in their first playoff start are 3-12. Now, 2 of those wins were against another quarterback in his first start. So
somebody had to win.
So somebody had to win. So if you take those 2 games and throw them out because it was a wash.
Sure.
Quarterbacks in their first start in the playoffs since 2013 are 1-10.
Who was the winner? You know?
I don't.
Oh man, we should have looked that one.
That'd be interesting to know. That was kind of half-ass on my part.
That'd be an interesting stat to know who it was.
Not figure out
was it Mark Sanchez? Could have been Mark Sanchez, actually.
Winning in Cincinnati.
Not in 2013.
I don't know. Anyway, sorry, back to the stats.
Anyway. Yeah. So, the Vikings pretty handily beat the Saints in week 1. But
that's week 1.
That was week 1. The Saints were starting Adrian Peterson, which I think a lot of people, probably myself included, thought would have been effective there. He wasn't. It didn't work out. It was a terrible match. They didn't know what they had in Alvin Kamara yet. He's been electric and completely changed that offense.
Is he the offensive rookie of the year?
I don't know how he isn't.
You've got Kareem Hunt as the leading rusher in Kansas City.
I know, and Alvin Kamara is that good.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara is still playing. It's supposed to stop at the regular season, but
I know,
voters don't ignore the playoffs completely.
Alvin Kamara wasn't really effectively used until about week 5, and he just burst onto the scene and has not looked back. So Kareem Hunt, he sagged a little bit and kind of ran into that rookie wall. I think Alvin Kamara, now maybe his wall is just farther out because he didn't start playing until later in the year, but just what he's done for that offense is amazing. And then one more little stat to support why I also think New Orleans wins is Drew Brees has been in the league since 2001, and in that time the Vikings have won 12 games twice, in 2009 and this year, 12 or more. That 09 team lost to Drew Brees in the playoffs. I think it happens again this year.
So you've got New Orleans. You both got New Orleans going on the road.
I do. So tell us why we're wrong.
I think Minnesota.
There you go.
I do.
He worded it. He knew he had Minnesota, so we're just waiting to find out. Let's hear it.
No. I have Minnesota here, number one, playing at home in that stadium. I can guarantee you, unless it's some kind of monsoon, they're going to open the place up and try and make those conditions against New Orleans in their favor. Because New Orleans plays in the Dome, of course. I don't know that you want to necessarily give them an even playing field if you can help it. If you have the weather to your advantage, why not use it? Even though you're in a dome, you can do I think they have it set up like the Colts do, where you can open up the side windows, for lack of a better phrasing, to do that. Plus, their defense is aggressive. They're active. They create turnovers. And I think that and enough of Case Keenum can get it done in that one. Plus, I also have to look at it from a perspective of Minnesota looking at this one, figuring it to some extent, of course. Mike Zimmer won't allow him to look that far ahead. But if our picks are right, Atlanta wins in Philly. Minnesota hosts the NFC Championship if they get through. The Super Bowl is also in Minnesota as well. So the way it's setting up, they have a nice path to get to the Super Bowl and host it. This one, I think, will be the doozy, though, for them if they're going to do it. But I think they have enough defensively to slow down Drew Brees in the passing game, especially because that running game was not particularly good against Carolina. Yeah. Brees had to throw for about 350 yards.
Which he can do without a problem.
Yes, he can.
If you have to fall back on your quarterback to win it,
on Drew Brees.
I want Drew Brees. That's what they've had to rely on.
I'm not discrediting. I'm not saying.
For the last 14 years.
I'm not saying
years.
Brees is going to play like Blake Bortles by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that defense with Harrison Smith in the safety spot, who might be the defensive player of the year and hilariously was not named to the Pro Bowl. I don't know how that works. I think
Pro Bowl is a popularity contest.
It is, but I think Pro Football Focus rated him out of 100, a score of 98 for the season.
No,
that's how good he's been. He might be the defensive player of the year out there, and I think that defense carries them through in this one. This one, I think, will be a tougher game for them than a potential NFC title game with either Atlanta or Philly. I think this is the tougher matchup.
I can't wait. It's going to be a hell of a matchup.
Yeah, and like you said, I think this at least as far as I can remember, this is the team with the best chance to play a home Super Bowl. Yeah. I can't recall another team with this good of a chance of playing the Super Bowl in your home stadium as the Vikings have this season for sure.
I said you got all your points with New Orleans are valid. And terrific points.
Of all of it, the biggest thing I think is Case Keenum versus Drew Brees in the playoffs. I just can't. That if you throw everything else out, I can't get past that.
I just think their defense. New Orleans is going to see a better defense here than they did against Carolina.
Agreed.
And New Orleans' running game did nothing against the Panthers. Now, like I said, I understand Drew Brees had a big game. He had to have a big game in that one, and I think they've started to get away from that, where they're relying on Brees so much. In part because, to the officer's point, that Kamara has been so good this season, they haven't had to. But they've started to figure out if they want to win consistently, they better be able to run the football. And they didn't do that very well last week. So I think facing a better defense this time around, I think it gives Minnesota enough of an advantage. This is going to be a tight one all the way. Minnesota's favored by 4. I think it's closer than that. I could see a last-second field goal winning this game.
Certainly could be.
That's how close I think this one will be. So that's a look at the playoff picture, but there's also always other news going around the NFL, not just the teams making the playoffs. And, of course, it finally was officially made official this week. The worst-kept secret in the National Football League, John Gruden, has finally been named the head coach of the Oakland Raiders. Once again, a reported 10-year contract worth $100 million. Crack open that one. I bet he did to celebrate that.
Oh, yeah.
He probably said,
might as well be $100 bajillion dollars.
To quote the owner, Mark Davis, at the press conference, this is a big effing deal.
Oh, yeah.
I'll pose it to you guys. Is it a big effing deal?
$100 million is a pretty big deal.
This is something I would have expected Al Davis to do.
Yeah.
Like this has Al Davis written all over
it. Like he sold the farm for Carson Palmer. He gave away 2 draft classes for Carson Palmer. I mean, it's astonishing. Like the money, and we talked about this, and we talked about it when he was, a candidate for the Tennessee job, or, the pipe dream of him going to Tennessee and other teams that may be interested interested in his services, what it was going to take to get him out of the booth, because the hours as a head coach versus the hours in the booth are a lot different. And we said it was going to take something stupid like $10 million a year. Well, hey, I got something stupid for you.
$10 million for 10
Davis
years.
says $10 million for 10 years. So,
You want to see stupid? Mark Davis, hold my beer.
yeah,
my bear.
Mark Davis took care of that. Coincidentally, him and John Gruden go to the same barber. But
Hey, man. Looking pretty good over here, man. What are you talking about?
I'll tell you what.
it's
Tell you what, man. Strong work there.
strong. It's strong. It's mind-boggling that a guy, again, and we talked about this with the Herm Edwards situation, a guy who hasn't coached in the NFL, $100 million to get him to come back. And here's where I think this makes sense for them. They're making the move to Vegas. They have to fire up their fan base.
Oh, yeah.
What better way to do it than with the guy who's probably the second most famous coach to ever coach for them?
I think this is the if you want to fire up a fan base, this is the perfect guy to hire.
That's exactly what I think this is. I don't think. I don't even know if Mark Davis believes that he'll make it through all 10 years, but it's.
I would think he does if he's willing to fork out that kind of cash, let alone a 10-year contract for a head coach.
As we know, it's probably not all guaranteed, but it's but still, I don't.
That's quite a few shekels
I
anyway.
know, but they're getting the fan base fired up, and I think the biggest question to me is, does it work? It fires up the fan base. Does it work on the field?
Does it work?
I don't know.
Because you have
so hard to
John
know.
Gruden is an offensive coach, and we saw what he did winning the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. Basically said, I'll leave Tony Dungy's defense alone, let Derek Brooks coach it. I'll fix the offense. And he won a Super Bowl with Brad freaking Johnson as his quarterback. He has a franchise quarterback now in Derek Carr there. Probably, I would think, going to make a change of tail back there. I don't think Beast Mode and John Gruden can survive in a locker room together.
I think they're going to butt heads on a few things.
How effectively can Derek Carr run Spider 2Y Banana? That's the real question.
a good point.
As long as he can find the turkey hole.
But the thing also, too, you have to consider, with John Gruden being an offensive coach, that Oakland defense this year was rancid.
Atrocious.
I don't think they had one single interception until like week 11 or 12 of the season.
I believe it was week 12.
Okay,
first interception came in week 12.
They have Khalil Mack, who is an absolute monster at linebacker / defensive end, whatever you want to call him. And then what else do you have? That's the part.
Name
that
one other player on their defense.
Reggie Nelson, because he played for the Bengals.
I couldn't even have told you that one.
But even so,
He went to about 36.
He's done nothing of note out there.
Yeah.
The only reason why we know him here is because he played for Cincinnati.
And he sucked here.
I just don't know, because we've never seen Gruden have to try to build a defense before. Everything up until that point, you could maybe say made some strides in Oakland, but they were a team, when he was the coach of the Raiders the first time, let's try and outscore you, because he had the weapons to do it. I don't know if he's able to build a defense because we haven't seen it yet. He already has the quarterback. He already has a stud receiver in Amari Cooper. I don't know. I really don't know how this is going to work in Oakland / Vegas.
Yeah, I don't know, and we know the Raiders like to screw up personnel decisions. We know they don't necessarily draft very well, whether it's Al or Mark Davis who's making those decisions.
They have in the last few years. Khalil Mack,
they've made
Derek
some
Carr,
good picks, but
Amari
they've
Cooper.
made some pretty terrible
Yes,
ones
they
too.
have.
I mean, as we all know here in Cincinnati, Mike Brown is in the same boat. Mike Brown makes bad decisions when it comes to personnel
Particularly
sometimes.
in the fifth round.
The fifth round of the 2005 NFL draft. I just you're expecting, and Coach George commented, you're expecting a huge return on that investment. You have to get a huge return on that investment.
I think this is Super Bowl or bust.
It has to be. And how many years does he give him? Coach George suggested 4. Within 4. I mean, it might have to be that quickly. If you're going to invest $10 million a year in a guy, it might have to be that quick to do something. He's won games at the other stops he's been on, but he's had more pieces in place, like you said. He did win a Super Bowl with Brad Johnson, who coincidentally, as we spoke about Marcus Mariota, also threw a touchdown pass to himself, by the way. Which is another random stat. Brad Johnson threw one to himself as well. But it's their defense is lacking so much that if the rumors are true about Paul Guenther, I don't know. I don't know if that makes the difference.
I'm so
it
glad
makes
they
me so
took him.
happy. Yes. The best news, far more than overshadowing the return of Marvin Lewis to Cincinnati. Paul Guenther's gone. Have him. Take him, Mark Davis, please.
Take him away.
We said in our chat, and I think even on Twitter, that we'll go pack Guenther stuff for him.
Yes.
Leave.
There are a number, maybe not all the fans, but there's probably enough fans that are more than willing to upgrade him to first class to get him out of here.
But anyway, back to this one. Officer, does this work with John Gruden going to Oakland?
Well, so you two know how I feel about this because we have a friend who is a John Gruden supporter, I would say, to put it mildly. And so you saw my argument that I had with him in our little text message group chat. And so
just a guy who's like a fan of like Texas and Florida and Nebraska.
And he was a diehard Tampa Bay fan in the early 2000s, specifically 2001. No, so you guys know how I feel about this, but I'm gonna, for our listeners, essentially.
Sure.
Tampa Bay, they had that defensive place with Tony Dungy. They bring in John Gruden. He wins the Super Bowl. That's awesome. And then in the next 6 years that he's at Tampa Bay, he doesn't win a playoff game. Not one single playoff game in the next 6 years. So yeah, great. You got the Super Bowl. That's awesome. That's more than a lot of teams can say. You didn't win a single playoff game for the next 6 years that you were with that team.
You made the comparison between him and Marvin Lewis.
Sometimes that keeps your job for 15 years.
His career win, right, yeah. His career win percentage is .540, and Marvin Lewis's is .527. So they're almost identical win percentages. And then you throw in the fact that John Gruden hasn't coached in 10 years.
Yeah.
So I can't wrap my brain around it. I know that it's getting the fan base up, and I guess
that has to be the sole reason.
It has to be.
You can't expect him to come in and
they're not
flip
going to
the
be up
script
when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like for 10 years.
Well, but you have to start somewhere, especially with now having to start in Vegas, and throw John Gruden in front of a crowd at a casino, and he's going to get people fired up and buying tickets, and you have to start somewhere, and that's the only reason to me that this makes sense right now. Maybe he's still got it.Maybe Spider 2 Wide Banana is still.
I mean, the game.
Maybe that's still the best thing out there.
Show me Xbox 460 wide quesadilla.
I mean, like
shout out Frank Caliendo.
Yeah. Think about when Joe Gibbs came back to the NFL. It
didn't work out well.
No, the game had changed. It's not the same.
And he's been around the game. Obviously, he does the stuff with the quarterbacks and stuff. It's kind of the same with Herm Edwards, where he hasn't been coaching every day, but he's been around the game. But yeah, that's a lot of time off. And again, it's back to the grind.
Right.
It's back to 80-hour work weeks.
Yeah, I don't
versus
see
what
it.
you were doing in the booth with ESPN. Now you're working 80 hours a week trying to get a team ready. To go out and win games in the NFL,
and I like John Gruden, and I'm going to miss.
I appreciate John Gruden.
I'm going to miss hearing him call games.
He became a very good analyst.
Yeah,
he did.
Well deserving.
He was well done. Well done on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, and they're going to have a hole to fill.
If their ESPN is smart, put Louis Riddick in the booth because that guy's freaking awesome. Anyway, continue.
So I mean, no, that's it. I could go on, but I feel like I'm rambling at this point. No, I don't see it. I think it's a terrible move. I think it's
terrible move.
Yes, I do. Well, I don't know. I guess they can afford to pay him $10 million.
Adjective wouldn't be terrible.
No, I'm not basing it on the money aspect. I mean, that is what it is. But you think,
I think you have to throw that into it
as a move. You think this is terrible.
If they were paying him $4.5 million for 4 years, I'd be like, oh yeah, all right, that's good. I like that. That's a good move.
The pure scope of the money is what makes this even more questionable.
I don't
it's certainly questionable at $10 million a year.
Right.
That's
I don't
very
see it being successful. When you look, okay, so 540 career win percentage, and he's got a Super Bowl. And then, so you subtract that. What's his win? Like, he's probably got a below 500 win percentage if you take out the year that he coached Tony Dungy's team. So, no.
Not sold.
I can't get behind it.
Officer's not sold.
Okay, so, but quickly here before we move on and the officer gets his next rant in, does he make it all 10 years of this contract?
No, I already said that. He doesn't make it 10.
No.
How many years does he make?
Before you, okay, let me ask you this: do you think he gets fired, or do you think he stops coaching?
If Mark Davis is as antsy as Al, 3 years.
You think after 1 year in Vegas he'll be gone?
He's got to be in the playoffs. He has to be in the playoffs. He's got to be competitive within 4 years.
I think I'll give him 5.
You give him all 5? Well, the move to Vegas is going to hurt because that's going to be a struggle.
I think the move to Vegas
that'll buy him those 2 years.
He'll basically
Vegas.
get at least 1 year of grace period.
Yeah,
but I also think Oakland now has a setup the Raiders do where they, I believe anyway, want to start building towards that. And if they're not as competitive next year, okay, fine. But I think they want to, with this move that they're making to Vegas and the $1 billion+ stadium that they're going in and hiring this flash name of John Gruden, I think they're putting all their chips in for that year in Vegas because
to have a blowout year that first year.
Their revenue's probably going to go up from it, so they're going to have more salary cap room to spend.
Yeah.
I could see them as they're going to Vegas spending a ton of money in free agency.
Oh, they're going to try and lure anybody they can to get to come to Vegas.
Go for it that season, but. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he makes it 10. I think he gets through 5, and then if they're not a significant contender by then maybe a move's made. And I think it's Mark Davis basically saying.
I mean, you got to remember Mark Davis fired a guy who went 8-8 there.
Well, I think Mark Davis is willing to pay that out because he's in that sense he's just like his dad. Just win, baby. It doesn't matter what the money is. Just win, baby. The commit to excellence, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter,
and that's great.
I'll pay it out.
I can appreciate that. He's like the anti Mike Brown. And
if you're willing to spend the money, maybe Mike Brown should take a page out of his book.
Yeah, so that's great.
Well, we know how Mike Brown is.
I don't see. I feel like I can see this getting the excitement and all that. I don't see this as a winning move. I don't see it.
Yeah.
With that, we will move on to the final segment of the show, and the officer, you got a little build up there talking about John Gruden. So let's let that continue now. This is your weekly installment of
Cleveland.
Officer, the floor is yours. Officer, go right ahead.
On camera 2, right?
Camera 2.
Not camera 1.
No, camera 2. I got it straight on, man. Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to kick it off with, I can't take credit for this one. It's just a funny, I guess, meme. 2016 Browns. We can't get any worse. 2017 Browns. Hold my beer! All right, so Joe Hayden had an interview this week, and he had an interesting quote. He said, they're paying Brock Osweiler $16 million, and he's not even on the team. And they wanted to cut money from me. So for people that aren't familiar with the situation, they told him that he's no longer a top 5 cornerback and he needed to take a pay cut from his $11 million salary. So they couldn't honor the contract that they agreed to despite the fact that they were way below the cap. He refused to take the cut, and 11 days before the season starts, they get rid of him. Steelers sign him immediately for 3 years, $27 million. Now he's playing a home game in January, and he's not enduring the 0-16 parade.
Yeah, that worked out well for him.
It did.
Too bad he wasn't a top 5 corner anymore.
No, he's a top 10 corner.
Yeah, enjoy your playoff run.
right.
Instead of an 0-16 season.
Exactly. He almost was the missing piece on that Steelers defense. Okay, so now the imperfect parade. Several of the Steelers or of the Browns players took offense, which I thought was a little interesting. Linebacker Christian Kirksey tweeted, "Don't kick us when we're down. Lift us up when we win. Don't praise us because I will remember when y'all laughed at us." Now, this guy was a team spokesperson for the Browns when they were kneeling for the national anthem. Now, he asked the fans to respect the player's opinion when this all was going on. Well, how about he respect the fans' opinion? I mean, where's the reciprocity there? He also tweeted, "Parade, shaking my head. Really? I'm still rocking in the city and will continue to work my butt off to bring the city what it deserves. But a parade, just keep putting in work. I mean, they crucified Jesus and he rose in 3 days and shocked the world. Browns for life." Okay, so
I'm sorry. You got to be kidding me.
You're right.
With that comparison.
He just compared the team to Jesus?
So I racked my brain on this.
You've got to be kidding.
I was trying to figure out where he was come from, and I had when I read that.
How dumb of a human are you?
No, I figured it out. I figured out exactly what he meant. By Jesus, he meant a pacifist that refused to hit anybody. Like their defense.
Oh, jeez.
So
that's next level intuition right there.
That had to be what he meant, because that's the
gosh.
only thing that fits.
The only thing.
Defensive tackle Danny Shelton tweets concerns about players avoiding Cleveland now because of the parade. Like, hey, Danny, a parade isn't the reason that players are avoiding Cleveland. Really, guy? Really?
That might have been the bright light in the city that week.
Right.
It's been a bright light for us.
He also, in other tweets, refers to Browns fans in quotes, as in fans. Then you got...
Is he high? Right. Does he not realize that the Browns fans are some of the most loyal fans in football?
They have to be
the dog pound is some of the most loyal fans in football.
Been there. Yes, they are. Literally been in the dog pound. Yes, they are.
What is this guy talking about?
Then you got defensive end Emmanuel Ogba. He tweets, "The parade is a joke. 0-16 is embarrassing enough as a player. What all these babies need to realize is they're getting paid millions of dollars to play a kid's game. They're living the dream. These fans that they're upset with are literally the reason that they don't have to work real jobs. They're the equivalent to a circus sideshow. They perform, and people pay to see that. And people expect them to win some games. If you don't like the parade, do better." Sorry, I lost my spot. The fans are not the problem in Cleveland. Don't get me wrong. There are many, many, many problems in Cleveland.
Many. Emphasis.
But their fans have endured much more than any fan base should have to. So, with that...
This has been your weekly installment of...
Cleveland,
just like Jesus. God, that taking the Lord's name in vain over that. I hope he doesn't come down and smite me. Jesus, he really evoked the power of Christ.
Right. He compared the Cleveland Browns.
He compared the Cleveland Browns to the Son of God.
To the Son of God.
like last season was Easter. This is what? Last season was Monday, Thursday. This season was Good Friday. So next season is Saturday. I forget the name of the Saturday. And then the season after that will be Easter. Like that's the Super Bowl season coming up. Yep. Unbelievable. That is the worst analogy I've ever heard, comparing a football team to Jesus.
An 0-16 football team.
To anything biblical.
Now, the parade was great. There was a couple of really good.
Oh, it was hilarious.
Like you had the guy holding the "I'm with stupid" sign, and then it was with the arrow pointing to the guy that was holding the sign that says season ticket holder.
I like the dinosaur that said "the last fan alive" from the last Cleveland Browns win.
And then there was one. There wasn't any pictures of it, but it was a story where this guy was walking down the street. And everyone was chanting, "Don't step in poop." So he turns around and starts chanting with them, "Don't step in poop." He stepped in poop. They were trying to warn him.
They were really trying to help.
He thought it was something like, the Browns are poop or something. I don't know. No, they were trying to.
They were really trying to help.
Hey, don't step in poop. Yeah.
Which is pretty common on the streets of Cleveland anyway.
Right.
Particularly around the stadium, which they took laps of to make the parade route in the
zero.
The big zero, which is great.
Right.
Yeah, I did see some players upset about them going around the stadium. Like they should do it somewhere else. Where else in Cleveland? Like that's like the best building in Cleveland is the stadium. What else are you going to use?
They did it in the shape of a zero too.
Yeah, that's the best part about it.
And did you see the picture of the guy that he shaved everything on his head, but except he had a line that went like all the way over to his head down to his neck beard, so it was a zero.
That's awesome.
Wow.
He had a zero of hair around.
It was probably the most fun that Browns fans had all season.
Oh, in the last two
and
seasons.
the players are complaining about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of that, and I have to give some of them credit that some of them showed up basically saying, we really do want to win here. It's just, we're trying to show. Some people try to say they're trying to show their support for the team by showing up for the parade, which is kind of ironic. But some of them, you can tell some of those fans up there some of them, the ones that attended, a lot of them were saying, come on, give us something to believe in.
Yeah.
And
they're
they
just
can't even
searching
do
for
that.
something.
They really are the best fans in football. They have to be.
They're as dedicated a fan base as you will find.
Right. They are rabid about that team, and that team has been bad for a long time.
Yeah, it's.
They've had
I would say I feel
one winning
bad
season
for
since
them, but-
'99.
Yeah, they cuddle up to their siblings when they get home, and
There we go.
so it's kind of they have that at least.
Okay, so we're going to close the show out now. and if you're out there watching and you want to send some not so nice comments out there on Twitter to our officer, I don't blame you, and you can do so by reaching him on Twitter at
FGP Cop, bring it on.
Did Joe Thomas in attendance at that?
Except Joe Thomas, you're awesome.
We love you, Joe. We got to get that in every show. At Joe Thomas 73, give him a shout because he's great. By the way, he's doing some social media stuff now. He's a great social media guy. His new they did a podcast, the Tomahawk podcast.
He and Andrew Hawkins, yeah.
Yeah, that was
the Tomahawk Show.
Yeah, he's getting it done, man.
Mr. Adam Kieft, you're on the Twitter.
Yeah, Fumblegate Fatty.
Follow the show at Fumblegate on the Twitter, FumblegatePodcast@gmail.com, and of course, always on the Facebook
Hey, wait,
page.
where else are we?
We're also on YouTube.
Yeah!
You can watch every Facebook Live broadcast. We upload the replay onto YouTube. Just go on YouTube, search Fumblegate. You can subscribe to that there and be notified of every time the video comes out to you. That is going to wrap it up for this week, and we thank everyone for watching on Facebook Live once again, as we do every single week. And we will catch you next time here on the Fumblegate Podcast.